Okay, welcome everyone and welcome back to Wellness Wednesday, where we share practical wellness tools and techniques from experts on topics that are important to patients, caregivers, and survivors alike. I'm Erin Kuhn-Krieger, and I'm happy to be back hosting this edition of Wellness Wednesday. Before we get started, I'm so excited to share that we'll once again be dashing together virtually. So save the date, because on Saturday, July 10th, our community will join together from around the world in support of Ralph's mission to provide personal support to those affected by pancreatic cancer through tailored resources, education, connections, and funding for early detection research. More details will be available soon, and we can't wait to see your creative ways and places that you're going to be dashing with us. Now, a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please ask questions throughout the session in the comment section below, and we'll be saving those questions until the end to make sure that we're able to get to everyone. In this afternoon's Wellness Wednesday segment, we're so excited to be doing our part during Mental Health Awareness Month to help end the stigma and open lines of communication. Today's topic is finding mental strength, where we'll be talking about coping strategies and survivor's guilt. Excuse me, my notes. Our speaker today is Lisa Trogdon, a health coach with Grounded Wellness, and as a heart attack and stroke survivor, Lisa has a unique perspective on health that inspires her to guide others on their journey toward well-being. She has a fascinating story and wonderful insights, and we're so excited for her to share with us today. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Is my sound okay? Can hear me all righty?
Yes.
Okay, great. All righty. So hello, everyone. My name is Lisa. Again, I am so honored to be here. I'm also a registered nurse. I've worked in the emergency department for about 35 years, and I became a certified health coach a few years ago to begin to work with people at the front end of their health journeys rather than so much focus on working with people after they've become acutely ill. And now really as a health coach, I do a little bit of both, working with people with acute illness, chronic illness, and also helping people just wherever they are on that spectrum. I do work as a certified health coach at Grounded Wellness, and Grounded Wellness has worked with Rolf Foundation in the past. And so I'm so excited to be here again. The first thing I'd like to talk about before I get started with my presentation is that when I approach a topic like resilience or mental strength, I don't come to the table with any ideas, Pollyanna attitudes, or rose-tinted glasses about resilience. I recognize again that health is a spectrum. And some days we are able to do the things that we know we should do and need to do. And there are other days that we can't. And perhaps what gives me the most unique perspective about resilience is the fact that I am a heart attack and stroke survivor. I live with diabetes, and I also have Meniere's, which is a vestibular imbalance disorder. And so I have ongoing illnesses myself, and I work with people who have found that developing the tool of resilience can be very beneficial to them at times. But again, there is no type of toxic positivity brought to the table that do this, do this, do this, and everything's going to be perfect and fine. As a person living with illness and as a person who helps those living with illness, I understand that every day is different, and sometimes every hour is different. So let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. And that should be full screen now. If it's not, somebody just let me know. Make sure that this is gonna, it's gonna go through. Okay. Alrighty. So again, the topic today is mental strength, developing coping strategies, and also talking a little bit about survivor's guilt. And this is going to be a conversation about building resilience in patients and in caregivers, because resilience is an important tool for both those living with illness and those giving care to those who are living with illness. So the first question on the table is probably going to be, what is resilience? And for me, the best word picture, and I'm a visual learner, is the picture of the willow tree. The willow tree with the forces of nature constantly bending the tree, blowing the tree back and forth, but that tree bends without breaking, continues going with the flow, and is able to rise back up despite the forces of nature. Another way that you might look at resilience is simply the ability to bounce back. You see this little dot or ball jumping back and forth, and below, or what might even be considered the waves, the traumas, the news, the daily events, and that little ball is bouncing back, going down into the experiences of life, but has developed the ability to spring back during the challenges. Another definition or way to look at resilience is the ability to get unstuck. Challenges are a part of every life. Some challenges are bigger and more overwhelming than others, but even everyday life can have small challenges, repetitive challenges, things that we face again and again. And the ability to get unstuck and move forward, even if it's just in the smallest ways, that is a part of that tool of resilience. So I want to talk just for a few minutes about some keys to building resilience. Um, Everything that I talk about today, again, can be applied to patients, those who are living with any type of illness, and also to caregivers. So building resilience is important to both groups of people. The first thing I always recommend is doing what you can to eliminate uncertainty. There's a fine line between trying to eliminate uncertainty and attempting to maintain complete control. And I always say that control really in the end is an illusion. We feel like we're in control, but then life happens and we find out that maybe not so much. But eliminating the uncertainties that we can be very beneficial to building that ability to spring back, because when we speak to the experts, when we speak to the people who can give us the answers that are available to us, that helps us again begin to become more grounded and feel more certain about our strength and our place in the situation. But then again, it is also important, just like that willow tree, to stay flexible. We want to avoid rigidity. We want to try to avoid, again, that attempting to control, complete control. By staying flexible, we are able to come back up when we're ready to rise back up in the midst of the challenge. I always encourage anyone living with illness or caring for someone who's living with illness to be self-compassionate and try your very best to stay non-judgmental. Life is certainly, as I said earlier, filled with small challenges every day. And then at times we get hit with things that are super challenging, very overwhelming. And we're all learning. And again, that's what I said when I said I don't come to the table with a Pollyanna attitude that, do these things and you'll respond and act and feel the way you should. Because on some days that just isn't possible. It's too much. It's overwhelming. So in those times of overwhelm and in those times that you're not quite as resilient as you're trying to be self-compassionate, be non-judgmental. The next key that I would offer is taking care of yourself, whether you are the patient or caregiver. It is so important to make sure that you are taking care of your physical and your psychological needs. And I'm going to talk a whole lot more in depth about that in just a little bit. Another key to building resilience is being willing to seek support. Sometimes we, again, I think in that attempt to control and maintain complete control, we feel like seeking support is a weakness, when actually seeking support is one of the most important keys, because when we're able to stand in the midst of a challenge with those people or resources supporting us, a lot of times that's what actually moves us back on path and helps us to stand stronger. I always encourage people to cultivate a sense of gratitude. Also, once again, not with some form of Pollyanna attitude that, if you feel this, this, and this, then the whole situation is going to change and you're going to feel differently and blah, blah, blah. But rather to say that although the situation may not change, your response to the situation is able to change, sometimes just by that sense of gratitude about something or someone. Focusing on one small positive thing, a lot of times we'll be able to build uh, that foundation of resilience. Another key to resilience is practicing resilience in smaller situations. And you remember I talked about the day-to-day challenges that we face, whether it may be traffic or someone at work or a deadline we can't quite make, or whatever it is in daily life. If we can try to practice resilience in those smaller situations, we get more comfortable, we develop that muscle of resilience, and we're able to wield resilience more strongly and more easily, if you think of it as a tool or a weapon. When the bigger challenges in life come along, we're prepared because we've been developing that resilience muscle in the smaller situations of life. Again, there are a lot of tools and practices that one can develop to work through the overwhelm of everyday life. Everyday life has its challenges, just like I talked about earlier. And one of the biggest things I think a person can do is begin to journal. There's something about moving all of the thoughts and concerns and worries and what you're thinking and facing from your mind down your arm in a pen and out onto paper. I call it a mind dump sometimes because I find it to be a great stress reliever for me when I'm in overwhelm, just to pour all of my thoughts and feelings out onto paper, because it's just a very safe space to actually put that overwhelm and to say the things that I'm feeling out onto paper. And then it a lot of times gives us a clearer picture as we try to then develop a way to face whatever it is that we're facing. Combining journaling with meditation can also be very helpful. Meditation, reflection, thinking about what's working, what's not working, what might help. As you read through your journaling and you look for, things that stand out to you that are kind of repeating over and over, being able to meditate on those things and think about how it is that you might approach it differently, a lot of times that can help to decrease that sense of overwhelm, because you begin to kind of almost formulate a plan of action. Another important thing to do is set gentle boundaries. And the word boundaries is used a lot today. I always tell my clients that boundaries don't have to be electric fences. It doesn't have to be something that we put around ourselves that, shocks and hurts and pushes people away from us, but rather gentle boundaries are really just us asking for what we need and being free to say to someone, I need some space, I need some time, I need whatever. Just setting those boundaries and being able to say, this is what I need in this moment. And a lot of times that can help to decrease that overwhelm, because number one, you're overwhelmed by whatever is pressuring you. And then you feel also a lot of overwhelm about, oh, how are they going to feel about this? But if you can just simply say to them, this is what I need right now, in a very gentle and kind way, and set that gentle boundary, a lot of times that can decrease that feeling of overwhelm. Once again, coming back to self compassion and while accepting your limitations, again, our circumstances may not change at all. And our limitations are what they are. So being able to be as strong as we can be, and we may be stronger in one moment and less strong in another moment, but showing ourselves self compassion during those times and recognizing that that is part of being human, is that we do have limitations. And last, I wanted to mention asking for help. Again, as a patient or as a caregiver, asking for help can be something to help decrease the overwhelm that we feel in everyday life. Be intentional when you ask for help. Uh, if you're asking a patient or a caregiver how you can help them, rather than saying, do you need anything? And then people's typical response to that is no. And then that's the end of the conversation. Be intentional. Do you need me to fix a meal for you tonight? Would it be helpful for you if I ran to the store for you and got groceries? Or do you need me to take you to this doctor's appointment? Be intentional, both when you're asking for help and when you're asking to give help. Be intentional rather than those broad closed-ended questions that, like I said, most of us, if somebody asks how we're feeling, we're just like, well, I'm okay, end of conversation. Rather than being so limited, ask open-ended questions that actually specifically, intentionally let that person know either what you need help with or how you're able to help them. So now let's talk about feelings of guilt. I kind of broke this into four pieces, and the first piece is about defining that feeling of guilt. And guilty feelings can be felt by the person who's living with illness, or the caregiver may be feeling guilt, or both. And the person living with illness may feel guilt because they're dependent on the caregiver, because things are not going as they envisioned that they would. They feel like a burden. While survivor's guilt is a sense of guilt that one may experience when they survive something that someone else does not or will not survive. So the thing about guilt is it takes up a great deal of emotional energy. And guilt is an emotion. And I always like to tell people that emotions are neutral, and try your very best not to label your emotions as good or bad. Uh, Emotions are emotions, and we are humans and we have emotions. And what we do is tend to get caught up in trying to label our emotions as, oh, that's a good one, or oh, that's a bad one, when really what they are is neutral. They just are emotions. And so it's important to take a step and reflect on those feelings, those emotions, acknowledge them. Sometimes I encourage people just to say it out loud. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel tired. I feel whatever it is that they're feeling, because our tendency is to try to tamp our emotions down. And what ends up happening is several emotions will gang up together and come out when you least expect it or least want them to. They don't go away. So just by calling them what they are and speaking out loud what you're feeling, and then trying to learn from them, why am I feeling this? And then trying to move forward from, this is why I'm feeling this way. What are some steps that I could take to move forward, to get unstuck out of these feelings of guilt? When you are trying to identify if the feelings that you're having are feelings of guilt, you may feel guilty for being healthy yourself. You may find yourself feeling like you didn't or you haven't provided good enough care. You may feel guilty about moving on with your life, or being happy, or laughing out loud, or smiling. You might feel guilty for doing something good for yourself. And again, a lot of times when we're feeling guilty, it's because we've set very unrealistic expectations about what we can do in a given situation. Again, there's always circumstances and limitations, particularly in larger challenges, that there really is not always something that we can do to control the situation. And so we set unrealistic expectations. And when we're not able to meet those expectations, we begin to feel guilty. The next piece of a feeling of guilt is to understand it and recognize that guilt, as I said earlier, is an emotion, and some level of guilt in anyone is a reasonable expectation. It's a part of the human condition, and it's one of the emotions that humans feel is a sense of guilt. But when guilt becomes a trap and it gets us stuck, again, can't move because we're stuck in this feeling of guilt, then it becomes where it's not helpful. Once again, I'm not labeling that as good or bad. I'm just asking you to just kind of consider, okay, has this guilty feeling that I have, that I've identified, has it become a trap for me, or is it actually helping me in some way? And really reflecting on that. Again, going back to that journaling, peeling the layers away. Why do I feel this? What can I do about it? Once again, acknowledging what you're feeling rather than trying to push it down. Remembering that you are not alone. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things through the Raw Foundation, the support that they offer, the community, the networking. You are not alone. And so try not to isolate yourself. And that's not to say that there are not times that you wish and very much need to have space. But try not to make that again, that electric fence, that boundary that says no one allowed in here at all. Keep it to where it's a gentle boundary, and then be able to recognize that there are people and places and resources that you can reach out to. And being compassionate to yourself. Again, if you think of all of this that I've talked about, and you have a friend, a family member, a loved one, someone you care very much about came to you in the very same similar situation that we've been talking about, a challenging illness, being ill, being the caregiver of someone who's very ill, going through lots of treatments, and they came to you and talked to you about how they were feeling, that they were feeling guilty, that they were feeling, kind of just stuck and isolated. Think about what you would say to them in that very same situation. And you should always, always offer yourself that same compassion that you would offer to a loved one in the same situation, because you are of high value. Even in the midst of the strongest challenges, you deserve compassion and concern, and you deserve to show yourself that same feeling and same advice that you would give to someone that you care for. And then, as far as feelings of guilt, beginning to manage them. Remember, if you feel stuck, you recognize you're in a pattern of guilt, you feel stuck by it, you don't feel able to move, then seek help, and that may be help from a trusted friend or a spiritual counselor, all the way to therapy. Ask for help and be willing to accept help. Another important thing to remember as you manage feelings of guilt is to remember that grief recovery is not linear. There are the stages of grief that Dr. Kubler-Ross very well delineated. But again, because those are delineated does not make them linear, because everybody's different. And we may move through one or two of the stages and then go back to the beginning, or we may move forward 2 or 3 stages and go back one. It just depends, again, on our own makeup, on what all's going on around us. And so we cannot hold ourselves to some form of this is the pattern that you should follow, and if you don't follow this, then something's wrong. Realizing again that guilt is a piece of that process, and that you may move in and out of that based on what's going on, and again, seeking help when you need it. Allowing yourself to laugh, allowing yourself to be happy. Those things are so important. They can be difficult, but just in the smallest ways. If you can allow yourself to grieve, obviously, of course, your grief is not going to be extracted in a moment. But if you can allow yourself to grieve while also allowing yourself to embrace something positive, even in the smallest way, again, seeking that gratitude for some small thing, smiling about something, laughing about something. Again, asking for help. I talked about that earlier. If you ask for help, which you always should if you need it, be specific about what you need. Let that person know that you're talking to, what it is that you need help with. And then another thing I always like to recommend to people when they're dealing with illness and the feelings of guilt and the overwhelm is try reaching out to others and be specific when you ask them what they need. I talked about journaling earlier, and maybe one reason I'm a huge fan of journaling is because I've journaled since I was a child. And I had my first heart attack in 2011. And 2 or 3 nights after my first heart attack, I wrote in my journal this couple of lines, and I just bring it to you to share with you again how journaling can help you sort through feelings. And also because I think this is kind of an important way to look at things. Allow the trials of your life to become seeds of compassion, and then plant those seeds in other people's lives. And that was a promise that I made to myself. And I've kept it perfectly? No, absolutely not. There are times that my life is so overwhelming. The idea of reaching out to others or helping others it's impossible. And I accept that. Show myself compassion. But overall, I try to live with the idea that the trials that I'm going through can become compassion and empathy, because back behind me down the road further that haven't gotten quite to where I am are many, many people in many of the same situations that I've faced. And so to reach back to them and plant seeds of compassion in their lives a lot of times brings more meaning to the trials that I have gone through. This is kind of a busy slide, but I can't overrate the importance of self-care. Your physical and psychological health are essential. Both of them, they're connected, and they impact your ability to give care to yourself and to give care to others. And I can't say it enough, self-care is never selfish. And in fact, it's often the path to improving our wellness and to improving the situation that we're in, is to be able to take the time to do something very positive for ourselves. Again, time will creep up on us and whisper in our ear, you don't have time, or this is selfish. Those things, just tune those out. Because remember, self-care habits are what contributes to our stamina and to our mental strength. And without stamina and mental strength, as patients and as caregivers, it's very, very difficult to be able to do the things that we need to do. Self-care habits can include eating nutritious foods, getting adequate sleep, staying hydrated, getting a little bit of physical activity every day. Keeping a positive attitude in the midst of that self-care helps you to recharge and refill your own cup. So if you select a self-care activity, for instance, I'm going to go for a short walk, keeping that positive attitude in your mind, thinking to yourself how good it feels, how helpful it is for you to do it, that helps to strengthen you and refill you and increase your ability to do the things that you need to do. There are many other things that you can do as far as self-care, meditation, yoga, gentle stretching, walking outdoors. All those things can decrease anxiety and stress levels. I always say when you're building a self-care practice, do what makes you feel best. I can't write out a list of self-care activities and hand them to someone and say, here, go do these things, because the self in it is you. And so you want to be sure that it's things that you look forward to and things that make you feel better. One of the most important things I always focus on is breath work. And the reason I do is because breath work can be done anywhere at any time. And that's just deep, mindful breathing. Just 4 or 5 deep, mindful. I'm thinking about nothing but the air moving through my nose into my lungs and out. That can be done anywhere, anytime. And science reveals that deep, mindful breathing moves us from the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, stress hormones, anxiety, overwhelm. Deep breathing moves us over to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is much more open, much more relaxed, much more of the logical, the frontal lobe of the brain versus the, people call it the reptilian part of the brain, or the amygdala, the place where the stress, fight or flight decisions are made. A lot of times this gets overcome with this. So if you can stop and take those deep breaths in the midst of a situation, it can help move you again to a place of a more logical, more reasonable, and a more place of safety and comfort. Again, the situation around you may not change at all. It may not change, but your response to the situation around you will change. So just a few closing thoughts. We've talked about a lot. Without resilience, we tend to find ourselves feeling like a failure. We feel like if we should just give up. Again, negative self-talk tends to take over when we are in the midst of a challenging situation and we're not very resilient. We get stuck in it. We start focusing on the negative and we get stuck there and we can't move forward, even the tiniest of steps. It's almost like we're stuck in glue. Self-care and honest reflection about what's going on and what we might do, showing ourselves compassion. Those are just a few of the keys that we've talked about that help build resilience. And again, trying to build resilience on a daily basis in much smaller situations can increase our mental strength over the long haul. So when those larger crises appear or arise, we are able to take that tool out of our toolkit and wield it in a much more efficient manner, because again, we're not in the midst of a big giant crisis trying to figure out how to do all of this. We've actually practiced it, and that's what, to me, practice is. You know, how do we learn to ride a bike? We practice. How do we learn to do anything? We practice it. We do it over and over and over until we become competent at it, and until it becomes second nature. If I didn't ride a bike for 2 or 3 years, I could probably get on a bike and still go down the road. And the same is with resilience. It becomes a first nature to us. It becomes what we do, how we take a stand in the midst of challenging situations. Again, are we aiming for perfection? No, we are not, because to me, perfection and control, those are kind of illusions. Life happens and shows us that we are not able to maintain levels of perfection or maintain levels of control. But being resilient, being that willow tree that's able to bend and rise back up, or that bouncing ball that's able to spring back up, those things come from that daily practice in small moments of resilience. That's all of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Okay.
Lisa, that was incredible. I don't know about everybody out there. I feel so much better and relaxed. Listening to you, I feel like you're a warm hug. So first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for that. I have a lot of questions. We've received a lot of questions. So let's jump in there.
Okay.
The first question is, I like the idea of journaling, but sometimes I run into perfectionism. So what are good strategies for making sure that I utilize the journal in the best way?
I kind of have a motto that I give to all my clients, and it is start where you are, start today, and start small. So if you aren't a journaler, don't tell yourself you're going to journal 50 pages tonight, because you're probably not going to. Instead, start small and say, I'm going to set a timer and I'm going to journal for 5 minutes. And maybe I'm going to do it every night. Maybe I want to start out the first week and say I'll do it 3 nights a week. And then again, that try to start today that goes back to that self-compassion. It goes back to that every day is a brand new day. Okay, let's don't focus on the fact that I didn't do it yesterday and I said I would. So start where you are, start small, and try to start today.
Right. And I remember back in grammar school, when we would have to journal, the teacher would say, you can write, I am writing, I am writing, I am writing until something comes to you. So
There's a
that
synergy that happens when with any habit that we're trying to create. If we can say, I'm going to write for 1 minute, there is something about resistance, breaking through the resistance and getting that paper and pen together. And you'll find yourself, okay, my 1 minute's up. And a lot of times you'll find you want to just keep on writing because that dam has been broken, that resistance.
for sure. So we talked a lot about self-care, which I'm so appreciative of, because I think too often people do think it's selfish, or I shouldn't do that. Or there's the other side of it of it's just mani-pedis, right? So, I really appreciate the idea of doing that. You talked about breath work as well. What apps would you recommend for people within the self-care arena? I know there's
Well,
things like
I think Calm is one of the probably the best one. There's one called Headspace.
Mhm.
I think if you went into your app store on your phone or your computer and typed in self care apps, it would be a whole lot of choices. And I usually am one to go with kind of reviews. I like to read and see what other people have said and think. And again, I could recommend several things, but what works for me might not be one that worked for you. What you need from a self-care app might be very different. So, just, say to yourself, I'm going to take a few minutes today and I'm going to look through, and then the beauty of it is you can try it out. A lot of them have free trials, and if it works for you, then great. And then if it doesn't, then you can try to find one. Talk to friends. A lot of times people uh, make good suggestions too, as far as what apps for self-care.
So we've got folks who are asking, they like the idea of meditating, but the actual meditating, the sitting there and quieting the mind and being able to sit is so challenging. I know, for myself as well. What do you recommend? Somebody asked, what am I doing wrong? I'll take a stab of answering that, saying you're not doing anything wrong. But Lisa, can you share a little bit more about how to work through that and ways
Mm-hmm.
to get going?
It goes back again to the word practice. We don't become competent at anything without practice. I'm sorry, there's a spider on my chair.
Oh, geez.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was coming right at me.
Take a break.
Oh, I'm going to need to do
Mhm.
some deep breathing. Practice. Okay, let me explain to you. I'm an ER nurse. I've been an ER nurse for 35 years. A lot of times my husband compares me to a hummingbird in a hamster wheel. My mind goes fast because that's my job, is to get things done and get them done. And so as I've begun to slow down with my own health challenges, mindfulness and practicing meditation were some things that I absolutely knew would be helpful for me and also would be a struggle for me. And so when I started my mindfulness practice, my meditation practice, just focusing on my breath was the place that I started. And I did it for a minute every day. I had it on my calendar. I had an alarm on my phone. Everybody's phone, if you've got an Apple Watch, it's always telling you, breathe, it's time to breathe. It's like, oh my gosh, I breathe all the time, leave me alone. But that true intentional mindful breathing, it just takes practice. And what it does, as soon as you've noticed your mind's wandered, that's not failure, that's mindfulness. My mind's wandered, back to the breathing and letting it out for a minute. And now I do it usually for about 30 minutes. A lot of breath work, about half breath work, and about half just focusing on whatever I hear, the sounds. I'll close my eyes, I'll get very grounded and spend 15 minutes and just hear what I hear. I hear the ceiling fan. I hear my dog panting. I hear my cat's meow. I hear the truck go by. So I didn't go from 0 to 30 in a day. It's taken me several months. But again, it's practice. And anytime we start to practice something, if we stop, just like that learning to ride a bike, learning to read, any of the things that we've learned to do, then it becomes impossible. Does that make
Definitely.
sense?
Great tips. Yes. Our next question is, I'm a caregiver and feel guilty living my life while my loved one is unable to do so. What advice do you have for granting me some peace? I can't even seem to feel okay going out to eat knowing my loved one is unable to.
Well, first of all, I totally and completely understand those feelings. Those type of feelings are, again, emotions. They're what the human condition is. It's what we experience. It's what we feel. Again, if you can kind of peel away the layers to try to understand, what's causing that. I know, of course, the love and concern and compassion for your loved one is causing some of that, but are you, attempting to control the situation somehow? Do you have way too high expectations of yourself? Are you seeking support? Are you getting people around you to support you and to help you to manage whatever it is that you're feeling? And I'm sure you all at the foundation probably have resources as well, as far as helping people deal with that. Okay, I see that this is what I'm in. I'm stuck in this. How do I get out of that? And again, that identification of this is where I'm at, to me, is the biggest step, being able to see it and then calling it what it is. And then again, trying to determine, why am I feeling this way, beyond just the normal reasons of why we would feel this way. Why am I even stuck in this deeper? And then what do I need to do to step forward? Do I need to ask for help? Do I need to talk to someone? Do I need to try to journal on this? Do I need to take some time for myself and ask someone to let me go for a 30-minute walk, just so I can just clear my mind and really focus on refilling myself? Maybe you're empty. Maybe your tank is empty. Maybe you haven't refilled your tank in a good long while. So again, it's complex, and I don't want to come across as just, do the things and it'll all be good, because I don't believe that. I believe there's times we do all the things and it still isn't good. It still isn't exactly like it should be. But again, that resilience comes from the using those tools. And I think people will receive the slides and be able to, it's kind of overwhelming all at once, but just take a tip at a time and just try it, experiment with it, be curious, see if it helps you. And if it does, then move forward with it.
That's great advice. And you had mentioned in your talk about the Ralph community. So, we have the ability to connect people with others in similar experiences. So please reach out to us via email, call, social media, however you need to. That this goes back to the asking for help piece.
Yes.
And we're happy to make those connections. Let's go to the flip side of this. If we're dealing with somebody who is too independent or too hesitant to accept help, how do you recommend we take away the option of them opting out?
Wow. That's a toughie. Because it's hard for us to, put our wishes on other people a lot of times. And it may, again, it may come down to those gentle boundaries and those conversations that sometimes, where we have to be able to say, I feel like you may need me in a way you don't recognize. How can I help you? And offer specific ways to that person, to kind of get that brainstorming going, that thought of, well, yeah, maybe I could use some help with that, versus just, do you need anything? The no conversation, end of conversation. But people that are extremely independent still in the end are human beings, and they still in the end are going to come to the point in time where they need support. They need help. They need those things, the self-care activities and those types of things. And so being able to just continue to support them and love them and be there for them when they come to that point where they're able to say, okay, I need some help.
Great. Now, I know many of you are joining us on your lunch hour. We have so many great questions. We're going to keep going for a little bit longer. If you do need to jump off, it's okay. We're here. It's going to be on Facebook Live. We'll send out the recording as well. So thank you, and we'll continue on. So then the next is, how can I find a mental health counselor in my area that works with medical issues like cancer, diagnosis, anxiety, etc.?
Erin, is that something, resources that you all might offer? I mean, I live in Tennessee. Via Zoom, we can get together with people all across the United States. I have particular therapists in my area that, you know, I kind of have relationships with. Maybe friends, family, other people that are going through similar situations, maybe be able to and there's always, you know, good old Google, you know, typing in things and just asking, you know, how do I find a good therapist who works with people dealing with illness and that the trauma that causes, you know. But as far as in any specific area, I would be really not able to specifically offer that kind of answer.
Okay, I didn't know if maybe there was a website, you know, of resources. That said, goes back to Ralph. Please, if you need somebody, please reach out. You can email us at info@ralphfoundation.org, and we're happy to be able to help in any way that we can. The next question is about eliminating uncertainty. How to balance educating ourselves and be our own advocate in consulting from Google. I'm not sure that last part, but can you give some examples on how we can eliminate uncertainty? What does that look like?
Well, for me, it's mostly has been gathering information and making sure that the information I gather comes from experts. You know, there's a whole lot of information out there. There is no shortage of information out there, but making sure who's this information coming from. And again, you know, typically you would hope and believe that that would be your healthcare provider if you're, you know, the challenge that you're facing is related to your illness. And so again, being that advocate for yourself, keeping a list of questions, having high expectations of your healthcare providers, and you know, expecting to walk away with as low a level of uncertainty as possible. Because if you can take that uncertainty out, a lot of times, then we tend to quit trying to grasp and control it so many different things, because we feel reassured that we know what we need to know, and we know all we can know. There's always going to be some level of uncertainty. But to me, you know, as a nurse, I would have to always go back to the healthcare provider and the resources that they may be able to suggest. And again, you all as experts, the resources that you might be able to suggest as far as expertise on what they're going through.
Great. And I love the idea of, you know, of being compassionate to yourself, of feel the feels, because oftentimes I think we think it's not okay. I should push through this. I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't do this. So being present and doing that, you know, I love that you give us permission, if you will, to do that. And also the notion of that there is no such thing as perfection, and that it's the enemy of good. You know, at sometimes a perfectionist myself, sometimes good enough is good enough.
Yeah.
So again, you know, it's the permission piece of that. And I'm sure we could go on for hours and hours and hours. We'll save that one for next time. But I wanted to thank you so much for all of this useful and important information. We appreciate that you make it so relatable, not just to those going through pancreatic cancer, but those in going through anything, you know, life in general, right? How can people get in touch with you?
Well, if I work as a health coach through Grounded Wellness, and that web address is groundedwellnessllc.com. And when you go to the website, you'll see at the top health coaching, and you can click there to learn more about me. I also have my own practice, and I have a website called the Chronic Illness Lounge.com, and it is filled with resources for people living with, typically with chronic illness, but living with illness in general. And again, all of the resources there are free. There's not anything there you'll find for sale. It's just my experience as a person living with illness, my experience in helping people live with illness, and my experience as a nurse, kind of all brought together in one place, again, to bring you to that place of quiet and calm. I call it a lounge for a reason, because I want people to be able to come there and just be at peace and pick and choose what they want, when they want. Their self-compassion videos on there, audios. There's just all kinds of resources to help people with what they need.
That's fantastic. Thank you again. This was terrific. If you're catching the replay, be sure to write replay in the comments and write your question there. That way we could get that over to Lisa and get the answer to you. I hope you'll join us next month on June 16th for Understanding the World of Cannabis, where Rebecca Abraham, a registered nurse and a cannabis nurse, will break down the facts and benefits of how cannabis can help cancer patients and those suffering from chronic illness, sleep issues, anxiety, and so much more. You could register now for the event using the link that is in the chat. And don't forget, if you have ideas for future Wellness Wednesday editions, please send them to us. We're always open to new speakers and topics, and want to make sure that we are covering areas that are most important to you. You could email us at info@ralphfoundation.org. And on behalf of everybody at the Ralph Pancreatic Cancer Foundation, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I hope you enjoy the weather. I think it's clearing up here in Chicago, and we hope that you continue to do your part to stay safe. We look forward to seeing you next month. And until then, take good care. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.